what is fintech and why do we need this? Right? So there are multiple definitions floating around. The one which I personally prefer, and this is the one which I have created myself, it is more about an ecosystem driven by disruptive technologies. So I'm going to focus on certain keywords and we are going to discuss more about that. So again, I will repeat, it is an evolving ecosystem driven by disruptive technologies helping deliver banking and financial services. Again, I will repeat, helping deliver banking and financial services to customers in a way which is faster, cost effective, intuitive, and easy to consume. Now, what does this mean? So, we need to unpack so many things within this, right? So, first of all, when you look at all these disruptive technologies, include technologies like AI, ML, blockchain, API, big data, IoT. All these technologies are there, right? It is kind of a fabric. And on top of which, fintechs are creating new products and services which can help deliver banking and financial services. So if you are getting, let's say, some product from healthcare industry, it is not called fintech. While it is using technology, it is not called fintech. Just to give you an example, let's say you are driving your car and you want to book a ticket to a movie. Now, when you are asking your Google Assistant, okay, Google, tell me the nearest theater to my place, and then you ask whether the movie is available for this time or not. The seats are available for this time or not. Do you think whether it is a fintech or not? You can mention this in your chat window. Do you think this solution is fintech solution? In the chat window, you can mention. Again, I will repeat. Let's say you want to book restaurant or you want to book movie ticket, and ask you simply ask whether it is available or not, or if available, just book it. Okay, I am looking at responses which is indicating you agree that it is fintech. So now let me tell you that till the time there is no delivery of financial product, till the time it is just showing you that this is the available ticket and you can book it. Till that time, it is not a fintech product. However, the moment you integrate with Google Pay can then allow you to pay for that ticket. Then it becomes fintech solution. I hope now everyone is clear. The fintech solution in this scenario will only be considered as fintech when there is a payment involved. Unlike unlike simply searching for any movie ticket or trying to identify a table, you need to also have consumption of financial services. Unless and until you are either getting some loan, making some payment, getting insurance product, or investing something, you are not getting into fintech. So fintech is nothing but design and delivery of financial products and solution in a way that creates a robust ecosystem which helps customer in consuming products faster, cost effective, intuitive, and in a easy to consume manner. So I hope now it is clear what is a fintech. Fintech will not come into picture unless and until you are consuming any banking and financial services. So payment, I will repeat again, payment, lending, insurance, wealth management are the core pillars of fintech. Whenever you are looking at all these things on the side, let's say e-commerce, again, just searching for product is not fintech. Paying for that product, either using, let's say, your credit card, UPI, or getting EMI option, cash on delivery, all these things then become fintech. So with this, we are going to move on to the main fabric of fintech. What is that will define the fintech itself, what is the fintech ecosystem, how fintech works, and what is driving fintech growth. So when you look at fintech subdomain, people divide fintech subdomain into four core areas and then two support areas. So when I say four core areas, pay tech, which is nothing but payment technologies, credit tech, which is nothing but lending related technologies, insure tech, again insurance technologies, and wealth tech, wealth management and investment management technologies. All these four pillars will carry the entire fintech ecosystem. However, to ensure that these four pillars of the ecosystem can do their task in an efficient manner, you require RegTech and SupTech. What does that mean? RegTech is nothing but regulatory and compliance technology. Because when you are growing, when you are using technology, you are talking about per second thousands of transactions. In a day, you are talking about trillions of transactions or millions of transactions, which humanly it is not possible to check and identify whether there is a fraud or whether there is some issue. You can't identify using traditional technologies. You can't use Excel anymore. You can't use simple databases anymore. That is when RegTech comes into picture. So RegTech is a compliance part to the entire fintech subdomains. SupTech is similar to RegTech. It is called supervisory technology. I will repeat, it is called supervisory technology, and it is used by supervisors. So in this case, RBI, SEBI, IRDA, and some of the other bodies or entities which are handling the compliance in the ecosystem, they will supervise the bank. They will supervise stock exchanges. To supervise, you require different set of technology, and that's called SupTech. So RegTech is something which, as a company, you will use. SupTech is something which regulator will use to check whether you are complying or not. I hope now subdomains are very clear. We will discuss more about four core subdomains, and you will understand even better after that. Now, why this revolution is possible, or this fintech is getting so fast, the growth, if you can see, right? Last few years, you have seen the CAGR has been amazing, and even the investment wise, you have seen great investment in last 5 years. Today, also in COVID pandemic situation, I have a slide on that. Fintech is still doing good, really good when it comes to the investment as well as the consumption space. So why it is happening? The main reason is the right set of enabling technologies and infrastructure which allows you to consume, discover, and also make sure that it is scalable, right? Making sure product or solution is scalable is very critical, because then only you can reduce the cost and make it more affordable, accessible, and approachable. So when you look at APIs are nothing but application programming interface. Typically, whenever you are consuming any software or service, you will use APIs even without knowing it. Just to demonstrate it very quickly, let me show you what I mean by APIs. So if you see my screen here, let me tell you cleartrip.com, right? So in this case, I'm going to try and book one flight. Let's say I want to book flight from Sydney. So the moment I type SYD, you can see I'm getting these two options, right? Do you think they have hard coded these options in a drop down box? No, it is not possible. You can't hard code thousands of options in drop down box. It becomes almost impossible for user to find out whatever he or she is trying to find, or whenever you are loading your page, because you are loading everything together, your page will be very slow. So because of these issues, APIs were created so that two softwares can speak to each other. In this case, the server and the client is able to then speak to each other. How? So just to show you, if you look at the F12 and then you look at network, this is a developer tool. You can bring it by going to these three dots. Under that, you can look at settings, and more tools. Under that, more tools and developer tools. So you can find this under more tool or developer tool, or you can press F12. Under that, you have network. Now, just to show you what actually happens behind the scene. So when I'm typing, let's say MUM here, immediately you will find there is a query going out, and I will right click on this query, open in new tab, and this is what it looks like. So this is what we call API. As a user from my client, I'm using graphical user interface and I'm trying to find something. Server identifies my query and then it provides me the response. So if I change this to SYD, I will get Sydney related query answer, right? So I don't need to store anything at the client side. Whatever client is searching, I can use my database and send the real-time response. So this is the power of API. And because of that, what you are able to do, understand one thing, we are not going to learn it coding or something like that. We are trying to understand how the technology is influencing business. So by using APIs, you are able to provide this products and solution where the user is currently buying something, where and when user is buying something. Again, it is very critical, right? Where, when, and how. That is very critical to understand in the scenario of API. So when you look at where buyer is buying, when he is buying, and how he is buying. So let's say you are buying something on Make My Trip. On Make My Trip, when you buy a flight ticket, along with that, you may be shown that do you want to buy insurance? Do you want to buy flight delay insurance? You can choose if it is up to you, but it is more likely that you are going to buy there than to figure out and find compare products from 10 different insurance company and then buy. It is not possible to go through that journey. It is very difficult, cumbersome for the customer. So if you are integrating your product at the time of purchase, where the customer himself or herself are present at that point in time, the conversion is more likely to happen. So APIs allow you to have a more contextual conversion. Similar to that, you can have holiday packages that you can sell, hotels that you may want to sell, food packages that you want to sell, events or trade show that you may want to sell. All those things are as a part of API ecosystem, you can present from different vendors. I make my trip, but different vendors can come to me. I can connect to their ecosystem, whatever product and services they are providing, and I can use it. Now, when we look at the blockchain is nothing but shared truth. It is nothing but creating trust without trusting anyone. Just to give you an example, let's say when you are traveling in train and you may see that there are people who are playing game of card. When you are looking at these people, they will be maintaining not only their record, but they will be maintaining record of each and every one. So each and every individual will be maintaining record after each and every round about who won the earlier round, so and so forth, right? So what happens, let's say if there is some trouble or there is some conflict, then everybody can verify on their own and majority wins. So let's say there are 5 people playing and 2 of them are friends. They falsify their record. They say that out of 10 rounds, 8th round was won by me and you don't agree. So there are more number of people who are having different record and then majority will win. So up to this point, any question you have, please post on your chat window. I will give you a couple of minutes to think through. Okay, I guess not. Let me continue. So the next technology is AIML. Now, when you look at AIML, again, it is just one of the technologies, but the way you can combine that along with the financial product can really change the way you deliver the product. For instance, in credit tech or lending, when you combine AI/ML and identify how likely a customer is to repay his loan, then once you use the technology, it is trained very well. It can predict better than human being. It can identify early warning system much accurately than us. Just to give you an example, lending requires two major consideration. One is ability to pay, which is nothing but your financial ability to pay, and second is willingness to pay. Even if you are financially well to do, but do you want to pay or not? Like otherwise, there can be situation like Malia and others you know about. So there are two different scenarios. One is ability to pay. Today, everyone will check your ability to pay because there is a civil record, your bank statement, your salary slip, so and so forth. There are so many things I can check to check your ability to pay. However, in order to identify willingness to pay, I need to rely upon qualitative parameter, not the quantitative parameter. Unlike ability to pay, willingness to pay depends on qualitative or subjective features. And because of that, I need to use AI/ML. Human judgment is also required, right? So AI/ML and human judgment put together can allow you to take credit decisioning in a much better way. Now, just to show you how big data can play a major role. So big data is nothing but a problem. It means that you are generating data in such a huge quantity and at a such high velocity that your traditional system or current systems are not capable of analyzing or making sense out of it. However, there are tools and solutions available today which can divide this workload, which can divide this processing requirement into small chunks. There are solutions like Hadoop, which can allow you to divide this processing, and it can help you to identify small trends, typical analysis that you want to do. You can't do because of the quantity of quantum of data. You can still do it with the tools available on top of Hadoop, like Spark and Tableau, in-memory databases, so on and so forth. So because of big data, you are able to make sense out of the data. That is very critical because without big data, without AI/ML put together, you cannot make sense out of the real world data which we are generating in terabytes per second today, which is really amazing to see that in last 10 years we have increased our data consumption by almost 10,000 times, and it is further growing. So big data solutions allows you to identify the trends, identify hidden patterns in the data, and using which you can then solve certain business problem, provide certain insight to your customer, drive better sales and conversions. Then it comes to IoT. IoT means Internet of Things. Internet of Things is nothing but set of sensors, which you can use to convert physical data points into digital. What do I mean by physical data point, physical parameter into digital? Let's say you talk about temperature or humidity. Temperature and humidity are analog signals. It is a real world phenomena. However, using sensors, you can convert that into digital pulses, and using internet, you can share it with the server. So what we are talking about is some things are there which can convert physical data points into digital, and they are connected to internet. That is what we call as the Internet of Things. Certain examples include smart home. Let's say at your home you have smart fridge, smart TV, smart tube light, fan, everything. Now they will communicate with your smartwatch. When you enter the home, it can identify you have entered. It can, based on your settings and your mood, it can identify, okay, you like this song, I can play this song right now. I can automatically switch on the lights, fan, AC, etc. So that is one example. Second example, when you look at about IoT, smart agri system. When you want to cultivate certain things in different soils, you don't know whether this crop is good suited for the type of soil that I'm having. IoT sensors can not only identify what type of soil it is, it can constantly monitor, and using automated systems, it can also regulate dripping or drip irrigation system. It can identify that you need to now put more fertilizer, it requires more shade, all those things it can identify using the sensor. So that is another example of IoT. A simple example of IoT, if you want to see, your mobile phone itself is IoT because it is a thing, it is with internet, and it contains most of the phones contain minimum 5 to 10 sensors like your gyroscope, accelerometer, your your skin detection, or basically your touch detection sensor, which is there, right? So that is also one of the sensors. Then you have magnetic sensor. There are so many sensors which are part of that, right? And that is why we call your phone as also one IoT device. Then you have AR, VR, and MR, which is nothing but augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. What happens because of AR, VR? Certain financial products and services which you otherwise can't consume because you are remotely there in some remote village area where bank cannot be there with you. So let's say today telecom is penetrating even the tier 2 and 3 cities or tier 4 cities as well. And because of Geo, because of so many different players in the market, internet cost, data connectivity cost is constantly going down, and the speed is increasing almost every year, right? So you are now talking about 5G. Already we have 4G, and the people are talking about 5G. So when you look at 4G, 5G like technologies, it allows you to consume data and information at much rapid pace. Because of that, what happens? Suddenly, certain business models which were earlier almost impossible to imagine, like Netflix. Netflix today, when you look at, right, similar to Netflix, you have Prime Video and so many different services. All these services provide you with HD video option. Just imagine viewing this HD video in the age of 2G phone. Impossible, right? You can't even watch simple 3G movies. Earlier in days, you had 3G small movies. That also was very difficult to download. Even MP3 tunes you were downloading used to take around 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? Because of that, when you are looking at infrastructure wise, technological speed wise, when the internet is available, technology is more accessible, automatically new technologies like AR, VR, MR can be utilized to provide financial services even in the remote most areas where the bank cannot be there, but I can bring bank to you. That's the idea. So very quickly, I'm going to first cover 4 pillars of fintech: payment and lending, followed by insurance and wealth management. So when you look at payment, I'm sure you all know about private players, MobiKwik, Paytm, Chiller, etc. I don't need to speak more about that. But let's talk about UPI. Everyone knows about what is UPI. It is a pipeline which allows you to make payment using your bank account to any person or a merchant. Now, why it is useful? Number one, the cost is zero when it comes to certain limit. There is zero cost. Second, you can have one virtual private ID, which is your VPA, virtual account. So that allows you to connect to one bank account, and that one bank account you can then share without sharing your actual bank account, without sharing your IFSC code and branch details. You can simply use, similar to email ID, you can simply provide that user ID. So if you are using Phone Pay or Google Pay, you will see your VPA is given. That virtual private account is given, and that number that is similar to something at the rate something. It is similar to email ID. So that allows you to transfer money. Beam is nothing but UI layer on top of UPI. So it is one application which is there on top of UPI. NUUP is something where you can use USSD protocol When I say USSD, you must be remembering *121# *111#. These were the commands you used to give to check your bank or basically check your mobile bill amount or bank balance based on whatever you are trying to achieve. So in this case, using USSD protocol, you can directly dial using any feature phone without internet. Any feature phone you can dial *99# and you can do banking on that. AEPS is Aadhaar enabled payment system. Using your biometric, you can access your bank account and do a financial transaction. It can be payment or it can be lending, anything. NASH, BBPS and NASH. These are the two remaining topic. BBPS is nothing but Bharat Bill Payment System. Earlier, what used to happen? Let's say you are a vendor, and as a vendor, you need to integrate with all the payment service provider or aggregator. Now, in that scenario, what used to happen? Let's say I'm a Reliance electricity company and I want to make myself available. My bills should be available to all the banks, all the payment systems everywhere. Now, there are two choices. I need to partner with everyone and then get it done, which will take very long time. And another one is that I can use BBPS system where I just need to submit once all my requirement to NPCI, and NPCI will take care of all the integrations requirement because now it is one to many relationship. NASH is similar to ECS. In ECS, you had fixed amount for fixed duration. However, under NASH, you can have any amount. Let's say up to certain money, you can say that I want to pay. And you can also have slightly dynamic scenario where you can execute two or more in-ash mandate and create a dynamic schedule. Now, just to give you an example, let's say your society maintenance bill. Every quarter you get society maintenance bill. And you will agree that the variation in that society maintenance bill will not be much. So when you look at society maintenance bill, the variation that you can see is very little. It is like 5% here and there. So what you can do, you can initiate in-ash mandate so that every month or every quarter, you don't need to write a check. As per in-ash mandate, up to a certain limit, it can be, let's say, if your quarterly bill is 10,000, you can specify 11,000 is the limit. Within that limit, whatever is the bill amount, it will get automatically honored. You don't need to worry about writing checks, and they need to also don't worry about reconciling this data. So that becomes very good. Now let's look at lending under fintech. Microfinance used to be a traditional ecosystem where fintech is allowing them to become more efficient by using technology like micro ATM, then bank on wheel, branch on wheel, where you don't need to create a branch. Your branch can be a vehicle which is having a mobility feature. Then you have P2P lending. Now, P2P lending is interesting because it is similar to your eBay or even Amazon. It is a marketplace. P2P lending is a marketplace model. Just to show you how it works. So, this is one P2P lending website. And you can see that under that, I have different options. I'm an investor right now, and I can see active borrower. There is one borrower who is trying to raise 3,070 rupee. And this is the detail given. Self-employed, 39 years of age, profession Guru Krupa Motor Garage, experience 4 year, financial net monthly income 30,000, then average monthly account balance is only 1,300. Corporation bank is the bank account, so and so forth. Documents verified on our behalf, they are giving you, and guarantor. Guarantor is organization named Monedo. Now, when you look at this detail, you may think, okay, I can see this detail. What is that I need to do? So similar to eBay and Amazon, where this platform create trust, this is also one marketplace model where they provide you all the relevant data points using which you need to decide on whether you want to invest or not. When you look at this specific example, you may decide I don't want to invest because when you look at the final balance, monthly balance, average monthly balance is only 1300, which means that out of 30,000, almost 29,000 is being spent every time. And hence you may not want to do it. It is fine. It is your call. This platform is just going to provide you with the information. However, call is yours. The agreement is between you as an investor and the borrower. There are multiple investors for a single borrower. Why it is required? It is required to ensure that risk diversification is achieved. If everybody is then, let's say, investing full amount into one person, if that account goes NPA, your 100% money is gone. Instead of that, you can divide your portfolio into 1,000 each, 100 companies. Instead of putting 1 lakh in one company, you are now putting small amount into multiple companies. I hope this is very clear, and P2P lending is now gaining more traction. But under COVID scenario, it is underperforming given that nobody knows the risk that we are going to get because of the reason you know, right? Moratorium and so on and so forth. Now, the next part is InsurTech and Wealth Tech. So when you look at InsurTech and Wealth Tech, very quickly, I will cover this two topic. So insurance technology is more about how companies can determine whether you are paying as per the risk that you are presenting. So let's say I am a person who is very healthy and I also always do jogging, do exercise versus someone else who is not doing jogging exercise, and that kind of a person has more risk, and hence when you look at the premium, that should also be different. However, today that is not the scenario. But can you achieve that? Answer is yes. What if I can install IoT sensor, or in a better word, you can say telemetric data in your car, and the way you drive your car, whether it is a rash driving or proper driving, I decide after 1 month of data point collection whether you will get discount or not. Similar to that, if I'm more healthy, I don't drink, smoke, etc., then my cost, insurance cost for personal and accidental insurance will go down. That is what we are talking about when we talk about technology and use of AIML. Similar to that, using robotic process automation, by automating stuff, you can reduce your claim processing lifetime from, let's say, few weeks into few hours. How it is possible? Because everything is automated. None of the users who are currently doing certain things, they need to do it manually anymore. And 10 users, earlier 10 users doing 100 tasks, today you can do 100 tasks using one person because it is automated. Because of RPA, claim processing and everything becomes much faster. Next point is robo-advisors and chatbot banking. This is when AIML meets investment management. So what do we mean by robo-advisor? Today, for any investment, you need to make sure the risk that you are ready to take is commensurate with your ability to take the risk, and the return that you are going to then generate should be based on the risk that you are able to take. So let's say if you are a young person earning 1 lakh per month, the risk taking ability that you have is much more than someone with 40 years of age and earning 1 lakh rupee, because the human capital that is still remaining in you is much higher than that 40 years old person. So the idea is very simple. You want to identify risk based on which you will get the return. Now, when you look at someone like me who is CA, CFA, CISA, and who knows about how the finance works and technology works, let's say somebody who has zero clue about finance and he's from technology background and he wants to invest into financial stocks. How can he do that? So using robo advisory, robot, or in this case, nothing but a bot or a program, can identify your requirement, understand the risk taking ability that you have, and based on that, recommend the course of action. When you need to invest, what you need to invest in, and how much you need to invest, when, what, and how much. These are the three core questions that you get answered. Then these are the two specific technologies which I want to focus more on. Basically because recently they are growing like crazy. Every now and then you must be listening to some news coming into this two technology domain. So first example, let me stop sharing my screen and share the video with you. Go through that video, and then another video will also share. Go through both the videos, and then I will explain it to you. So this is the Amazon Go. Just have a listen to this.
4 years ago, we started to wonder, what would shopping look like if you could walk into a store, grab what you want, and just go? What if we could weave the most advanced machine learning, computer vision, and AI into the very fabric of a store so you never have to wait in line? No lines, no checkouts, no registers. Welcome to Amazon Go. Use the Amazon Go app to enter. Then put away your phone and start shopping. It's really that simple. Take whatever you like. Anything you pick up is automatically added to your virtual cart. If you change your mind about that cupcake, just put it back. Our technology will update your virtual cart automatically. So, how does it work? We used computer vision, deep learning algorithms, and sensor fusion, much like you'd find in...
So as you can see in this case, sensor fusion is nothing but IoT. Computer vision is AIML, and sensor fusion is IoT. And using Internet of Things, they're able to identify that what item you are picking up and whether you are the person who is going to pick up this item so that you can be charged. How it is done? Of course, it is a big topic, but basically they use multiple sensors, they use 3D cameras, and they use a laser system, which allows you to identify who is that buying and how much they are picking up. Now, when you look at this system, it is just a technology. But when you look at the fintech part of it, it allows you to seamlessly purchase and pay. That is very critical. Using Amazon Pay, you can also pay directly using your mobile phone. You don't need to do anything. You just need to authorize and it makes the payment. So it becomes very smooth, seamless experience for the customer. Now, similar to that, let me share with you another video. This is a Internet of Thing, and another part is from the AR VR, which you discussed, and it is called Internet on Things. So what do I mean by that? Let me share my screen very quickly.
Have you ever seen a flower and wondered what kind it was? Have you looked at an animal and wanted to learn more? Do you ever wish your favorite food could tell you everything about it? And what if an instrument could teach you how to play it? Could the brands you love tell you their stories? And now imagine the simplest objects, connected in ways you never thought possible.
Okay, so now when you look at this second example, it is more about Internet on Things, where you can bring the entire knowledge repository from Internet on an object. So how it can be useful? Of course, there are multiple ways in which this can be very useful. For example, visual search. Let's say you specifically ladies, right? They liked some sari or dress while viewing some serial or movie, and they want to buy it. Now you can't Google that there is a dress I want where you have a flower pattern at 45-degree angle. You can't search something like this, right? For that, you require visual search. And Internet on Things provides you that. So you can simply scan someone who is wearing that, or a movie clip that you are having. You can simply scan that, and you can identify nearest store or online e-commerce website where closest match is available. That is what we call Internet on Things. Another example, let's say we are talking about your credit card. The moment you receive your first credit card, along with that credit card kit, you have welcome letter, you have terms and conditions, so on and so forth. There are certain privilege onward cards where you have a offer portfolio which is given to you, that this card allows you to have these advantages. Now, cost of delivering such offers in paper format is very high. What you can simply do, you can just send the card across. When you use the application, and you can scan the card, automatically all the relevant documents related to card will be visible. All the relevant offers that I have on the card will be visible, and I don't need to then figure out from where I need to find, because everything is on the object itself. By scanning that object, I'm trying to bring entire wealth of knowledge on top of it. And finally, let's look at what is the impact of COVID on fintech as well as other ecosystem. So when you look at e-commerce, under e-commerce, non-essential means that I don't need it. So when you look at it, is a spend where it is discretionary in nature. You don't need to spend any money, and hence it is facing much dire consequences of the lockdown. Now, when you look at and even under the partial lockdown model, you can't grow in the same format, right? People are more cautious. They don't want to eat from outside. So if you notice, Swiggy started with Swiggy Genie offering. Why? Because their volumes are not as high as what it used to be. And because of that, whatever staff member they have, they wanted them to deploy on alternative revenue opportunities. And because of COVID-19, people can't travel. So what they did, they ensured that with the proper health and safety measures, these people can become a indirectly a courier boy, right? So that becomes much more uh, easier for everyone to then understand and consume the product. Then when you look at, I'm just going to go to fintech directly because this is the topic where we are today. So payment, when you look at payment, it is moderately dead. While every digital payments are on growth, yeah, like UPI, etc., other form of payment is not growing as fast because e-commerce transaction, etc., have gone down. Lending, however, is completely on the green side. But when you look at overall impact, it is still red. Why? Because people are not ready to lend to anyone. On the example which I give you about P2P lending, earlier, like 5 months ago, you had seen each and every borrower used to get completely oversubscribed. Like if you want 5 lakh rupee, you will get it. But today, nobody is willing to lend it to someone. Even banks are holding on cash, but they are not lending. InsurTech, it is positive because of the increased demand on COVID side, and because people have realized that since I can't distribute my product physically, I need to distribute digitally, and hence InsurTech companies are getting more and more leverage. Then you have wealth tech. Again, nothing much to do, and business model is sound. Type of spend. When you look at if it is pure play wealth tech, typical advisory model, at that point in time, it is red because people are saving and putting something on a liquid side. They don't want to put in market immediately. However, when you look at certain different category like Zerodha or certain wealth management platforms, they are having amazing demand because people are more comfortable by just trading online. They don't want to have any sort of distraction. All these strategies they can do, back testing, etc., they can do online, which allows them to do so. Neo banking is nothing but providing multiple banking services together, and that is also benefiting out of it. With this, I'm open to for Q&A. We have 10 minutes, and I think Lokesh, you may want to take it over for Q&A. If you have any question, either you can unmute and ask, or you can simply uh, raise your question in chat box.
So now we will begin with the question and answer session. If anyone has a question, you can put it in the chat. And if you want to ask it personally to sir, you can put that statement in the chat as well. Thank you.
Okay, we have one question from Neeraj. He is asking, how is bank's digital performance compared? Compared with what, I don't know, but if, let's say, even if it is open-ended question, let's understand what is the digital performance to begin with. First of all, you need to look at scalability part, whether the technology is for future or not, right? Because it has to be something which is not only scalable, but it cannot become obsolete within few months or within a year or so, right? So it has to be recent, cutting edge, new age technology, right? That is another thing. Third thing is that what is the ROI? Whatever investment I'm doing, if I'm investing into cutting edge technology, which is amazing, and I can scale it also, it is very scalable. But ROI is going to be negative, or the payback period is, let's say, 20 years, it is of no use, because we know for sure that within 5 years, again, the technology will be completely changing. So we cannot then look at such investment at all. So your digital performance should be evaluated based on whether your digital journey is able to meet your objective or not. That is the main agenda for your research or whenever you are comparing something. If, let's say, your ROI is positive, the scalability part is met, and it is not going to become obsolete in 1 year or so, then it is good enough. Whatever investment you have done is good enough. I hope that answers your question, Neeraj. Any other question, anyone? I encourage you to ask question, because look, fintech is a very vast subject. I just gave you a small background, what is fintech today, and the idea was to demonstrate certain real world scenarios that, look, this is what can happen. Please go ahead and ask
a question.
Yes, Kaushik.
Yes, sir. Like न्यू बँकिंगचं तुम्ही जसं म्हटलात, लाईक युनायटेड स्टेट्स मध्ये आणि काही बाकीच्या कंट्रीज मध्ये न्यू बँक्स आता पॉप्युलर होत आहेत. आणि लाईक इंडियामध्ये म्हणजे तुमचं कसं ओपिनियन आहे, आणि कसं जसं न्यू जनरेशन ट्रेडिशनल बँकिंगला एवढं प्रेफर नाही करत, जेणेकरून लाईक क्विक ट्रान्झॅक्शन्स, मोबाईल पेमेंट्स आणि जसं युपीआयचं एक आलेलं आपल्याकडे आता, लाईक असं न्यू बँकिंगचं इंडियामध्ये तुमचं काय ओपिनियन आहे त्याच्यावर?
I hope it is okay if I answer still in English so that everyone can understand. So his question is mainly on how neo-banking is performing in India. First of all, let's understand the strict definition of neo-bank. Neo-bank is nothing but new age bank, where by getting license, banking license, they are simply having digital presence, no physical presence at all, and providing all the product and services that a normal bank can provide. In India, however, you cannot have separate banking license. So either you are a bank or you are not a bank. You can be NBFC or you can be something else, but you can't provide neo-banking service by just getting license that way. So what happens today in India? In India, you have certain specific neo-banks which are partnering with real banks. So let's say Bank Open. It is the biggest and largest neo-bank in India. They focus mainly on SMEs and MSMEs. They have partnered with ICICI Bank for all the banking products, because they themselves can't provide you with a current account or some other account, right? They can't provide you. They can't provide you with the credit card, debit card directly. So they need to partner. So that becomes very critical. So when you look at in India, specifically in India, neo-banks are targeting new age customer. They are not targeting old customer at all, because as the word suggests, neo-bank is for a new age customer. and it is completely digital. So old age people may not be able to get themselves familiar enough to the new ecosystem that they have built. However, people like you and me and the new generation, they are very tech savvy. They can simply consume this product, start using it, and even new age entrepreneurs are very happy using this product because they don't need to visit bank. Everything can come under one umbrella, right? So that, I hope, answers your question. Before that, I will simply share a screen so that it can give you real life example. So if you look at my screen, bankopen.co, this is the website, India's largest neobank, and you can see what kind of services they provide, right? So they provide multiple different services. However, their anchor point is accounting. So it allows you to raise invoices, do accounting, and all the other products are around that. So let's say while doing accounting, you may want to even pay invoices. You may want to pay salary to your employees. You may want to open salary account with the bank. You may want to open current account with bank. You may want to get policy for your employees, group insurance or whatever. You may want to insure your premises. So all these things, then they are building on top of it. You have an anchor point and then they are building on top of it. So I hope that answers your question. We can continue our journey with the next question. We have a couple of more minutes, so I guess it is the last question we can take. One question I have seen is on the chat window. In India, do you see a new bank being established, which is strictly digital? So RBI today, when you look at, right, there are multiple different sort of licenses available, but digital banking license is not yet available. However, from the sources that I know, people in RBI are thinking about it, given that in Singapore, Hong Kong, everywhere, you have a virtual bank license.